Never has there ever been a time where it has been so easy to connect with people. The internet, cellular devices, instant messaging. The digital age has brought with it a plethora of communication opportunities. So much so that it makes me wonder if it's all really true. Are we really connected? With all of these avenues of communication, I have noticed a common trend. People do not use these to communicate in the same way they do in real life. Some people create an online persona of themselves. On the internet, some people may feel more comfortable expressing who they really are, or they may not feel comfortable expressing who they really are. As a people, we are now more connected than ever. However, it seems that we are also more antagonistic than ever. This is due to several things, one of which being assumptions, assuming how people feel and assuming what people think. If we quote-unquote connect with people over the internet, we are getting a snapshot of who they are, because we don't know them. This reminds me of a story of a little reindeer girl who always had help from those around her, whether she wanted it or not. We see ample examples of this in the story I'm about to tell you, although I am getting ahead of myself. Deltarune Chapter 1 was the start of something amazing. It was the perfect beginning, a foundation, if you will. The game has changed now. Armed with a team of talented and trusted individuals, the stage has been set for the story of Deltarune to begin in earnest. Building off that excellent foundation, with even more resources at his disposal, there's nowhere to go but up. And today, I'm going to tell you how Deltarune Chapter 2 was the perfect escalation. Hello again, people, and welcome to my Deltarune Chapter 2 analysis. Throughout these many sessions of internet yapping, I will be breaking down and comprehensively interpreting the many complexities of our wonderful sequel. I have learned several things finishing the Chapter 1 analysis. After considering my options and the very much appreciated feedback from all of you, I have decided to segment the work into multiple parts. So you will all get more videos at a higher rate of consistency. Chapter 2 is enormous, so I have divided the analysis into 3 main parts: Cyberfield, Cyber City, and finally the Queen's Mansion. Make no mistake, I will be talking about all of Chapter 2. These areas will simply act as cap endpoints. After a main analysis video, you then will receive a character analysis video to complement the larger video. Following the release of the Cyberfield analysis, I will begin a full analysis of Deltarune's Little Bluebird. Then we alternate, one big analysis, one not so big character analysis, and if everything goes well, you will get more consistent uploads without the sacrilege of quality. I've also recently brought in an editor for the first time to help me keep up with the work, so here's hoping that goes well. Finally, a Weird Route video will be used to end the series. In totality, the Chapter 2 analysis will consist of 6 or 7 videos. So yeah, that's the format we're going with. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you understand why I went with this. I have to be flexible in case Toby decides to drop Chapter 5 sooner rather than later. I doubt that he will, but I have to plan ahead, right? Don't want to be in the middle of a 6-hour-long analysis when Chapter 5 drops. Let's start things off by recounting the events of one of the most hype moments in this game's history. I was there for this.
Don't forget, I'm with you in the dark.
This was all that Deltarune was for a long time. A single chapter, a crazy cliffhanger, and 10 verses sung by Laura Shigehara. An ending the fandom just had to be content with for 3 years. On the day of September 15th, 2021, Undertale's 6th anniversary, Toby and co decided to play Chapter 1 for some reason. Now this is how you release a new chapter. Everything was perfect. The build-up, the introduction of Newbert, who hasn't really garnered much fame with the fans since then. New bird theory in the future, maybe? Long story short, Chapter 2 was teased and announced at the end of the stream, and 2 days later, we played it. This was still a year before my first Deltarune video, mind you, so there's not much history here that I could recount, but this was a big part of Deltarune's history that deserves to be remembered. After hours of buildup and confusion, we all had our assumptions proven correct. This was the day Toby decided to announce the coveted Chapter 2 after 3 years of waiting. Before the release date was announced, the stream concluded with a short gameplay demo. Chris and Susie were back and ready to explore the Dark Worlds once again. And really, there isn't that much more to say. This event was a slam dunk, and the only thing about this event that could be considered negative is that it technically was responsible for building up people's expectations for the Undertale 10-year anniversary. Well, that and the fact that Deltarune Chapter 1 Newbert Edition is now lost media forever. Seriously guys, everyone is sleeping on Newbert and I have no idea why. Now I would say it's about time we get to the plot summary portion. If you know the story already, skip to this timestamp. Let's go. We hear a voice calling out to Chris. It's Toriel, in distress. She calls out to Chris and then notices Chris's knife. Toriel cries out in terror, and then we see her enter the room completely unharmed. Chris has eaten all the pie again. Dang it, Chris. Anyway, it's time for school again. Chris arrives to the classroom and finds everyone waiting for them, Susie included. She's agitated over the fact that she made an effort to show up on time when Chris did not. The class begins with a simple reading. Noelle raises her hand and offers to read the passage, but Berdly steps right up onto his desk and offers to read it for her. How gracious. Berdly begins to read what I believe is a passage from a Charles Dickens novel, or at least a parody of it. For the sake of time, Chris closes their eyes and we jump forward to the end of class. Chris has slept all class and Miss Alpheus is not upset in any way, although she has taken notice. This seems to be a common occurrence, and instead of chastising Chris, she tells them not to worry. Outside, Susie is waiting for them. She takes a moment to jab at Chris, calling them the class zombie. She's noticeably less angry compared to yesterday, but it seems that old habits die hard. She quickly becomes elated, recounting the wonderful experience they shared yesterday. Without any patience to spare, Susie grabs Chris by the hand and rushes over to the supply closet. Before they go inside, she stops and begins to trail off. What happened yesterday was so fantastic, so special, it felt like a dream. So, what if it was? What if it wasn't real? If they open this door right now and they find nothing, what will happen between them? There's only one way to find out, and here's Noelle. Susie is completely taken by surprise, turning her back against the door. Noelle has found the two of them and she wants to invite Susie to come study with her in the library today. Their school project has yet to be started, and of course we all know that is the highest priority right now. After giving Noelle an excuse as to why two friends would spend time alone in a closet, Noelle leaves. However, if you talk to her in Chapter 1 and told her that Susie enjoys eating chalk, Noelle will give Susie a lovely gift of chalk. It seems like Noelle may be interested in spending more time with Susie. Maybe she'll get a chance later today. Susie is beside herself once again. Why would Noelle want to spend time with her? Could it be that she genuinely finds an aspect of Susie's personality delightful, maybe even appealing? Susie doesn't seem to think so, so she is worried that Noelle might find out about their secret identities. Those identities being the exact same ones they have currently, just maybe with different clothes on. She turns to Chris and states firmly that no one can find out about this. They should keep any and all Dark World business between them. It is our thing, she says, and I'll get to that later. The doors open and the two Lightners jump down and we see several rings of light fall down around them to imply that they are falling down at great distance, much like before. After a stylish transition, we see that Chris's eyes are still a bright red, just like the night before. The Castletown Dark World appears around them once again, but this time they appear at the foot of Dark Castle. Rousey is there to greet them, sporting a hatless look that he debuted yesterday. He welcomes his new friends to his kingdom, but something is wrong. Rouse is the only one here. Susie is off-put by this emptiness, yet Rouse tells her not to worry. Lancer will join her shortly. He then gives Chris a series of instructions. Go to the unused classroom and grab everything off the floor. It seems Rouse is an expert of light world architecture without even being there. Chris acquires the trash orb and leaves the class. However, before you go to the closet, Toriel and Alpheus can be seen having a conversation in the hallway. Toriel seems to be worried about Chris lately, and Alpheus seemingly gives a sarcastic remark implying that Toriel has only recently noticed that Chris has acted differently. Returning to the Dark World, we see the Darkners have returned as well. Lancer, the Rudens, even Hathy is here. There are several conversations to be had in the upgraded castle town. For example, Mr. Society has claimed that he is a coward and decides to remove himself from the town until he decides he can return. Sham has returned to their job as a vendor, and is delighted to know that we defeated Jebel. They gladly accept the shadow crystal we got from Jebel, although I feel the word take is more accurate. More narrative developments present themselves. Rouse, in the span of roughly 12 hours, has made rooms for his Lightner friends. Call it just being polite, but it seems like Rouse is prepared to accommodate our heroes should they need a place to rest their heads. The king is there in the town as well, although he is placed behind bars as he refuses to be cooperative. Funny that there was a cell already made for him. I guess any kingdom needs a dungeon. Even Rouse must plan ahead for any wrongdoing in his kingdom. Before we leave, Susie protests and lets slip that they have yet to start on their project. In a rare display of impatience, Rouse demands that both of them leave to start their project. Lancer takes a spot in our inventory as well as Rule's card, even though no one wanted that. Also, if you decided to talk to the original Starwalker in Chapter 1, they join your party as well. Right after Susie walks away, Rouse wishes Chris good luck today, as if he is almost anticipating that Chris will need luck in the coming hours. School projects are tough, although I'm not so sure that Rouse was thinking about that. The town is experiencing a traffic jam, which Officer Undyne seems to be doing everything she can to clean up. At least, I think she is. It seems like she's getting in the way of things. Inside the library, Noelle and Berdly are nowhere to be found. If you have a keen eye, you'll notice the single big door to the computer lab has been altered into a double door. Honestly, I don't know if I should praise the game for fooling us into thinking we won't see the computer lab until the end of the game, or criticize it for a continuity error. So I will do neither and move on. Before jumping in, you have the ability to speak to Susie, either affirming her drive for adventure or offering an alternative activity. If you choose the latter, Susie will agree, but drag you in anyway. Susie cites that it was Chris's mistake for knowing her in the first place, which we will get back to later. Upon entering this new dark world, our heroes are met with a more mechanical vista compared to yesterday. The color palette has been established with a nice hue of green. This distinct color arrangement is overshadowed by the fact that the surrounding area is completely wrecked. Divots, fractures, and missing chunks are present throughout. This, compiled with the shaken NPCs trying to warn you, imply that a catastrophic event recently took place here. Eventually, we stumble across Noelle, who has now donned a white dress as her Dark World attire. She is surprised to see Susie here, but immediately warns her of an incoming threat. Before she can finish, the threat arrives, taking Noelle hostage. Enter the Queen of Cyberworld. This eccentric monarch will be our antagonist for the chapter. She has taken a more direct approach in stopping the Lightners, more anterior compared to the King of Card Castle. Her plan is simple. Capture Noelle and convert her to the robot army she has been building. With her help, the Queen plans to take over the world, covering it in darkness. The Queen needs Noelle to accomplish her plan, but she also wants Noelle to agree willingly. Naturally, Susie rebukes this plan and the Queen decides to leave, but not before displaying her capacity to control others. The tiny Darkners from earlier are brought forth. to which a pair of blue plugs fall from the sky and proceed to take over their bodies. After the initial vanguard is defeated, Rousey arrives and the fun gang poses for dramatic effect. Moving through the initial paths of Cyberworld, we see a floating Darkner which appears to be launching music-based attacks. The screen flashes and we are met with a fantastic scenic overlook. A sprawling city of wire and silicone stretches off into the distance. The upbeat music and the flavor text from the save point confirm. This is the start of a brand new adventure. This place is called Cyber Field, although its appearance is more akin to a series of platforms. As we explore, we meet a few interesting Darkners with information to share. This tiny Darkner explains that the internet has recently gone out, and they theorize this is the reason why the Queen has been acting so strange. Thankfully, the Queen's tyranny has not taken hold completely, as we meet a group of 3 Darkners claiming to be freedom fighters for the side of good. Even though some of them have odd reasons for joining, it's nice to know that Darkners have free will. The music group known as Sweet Cap and Cakes are of the belief that our heroes are working with the Queen. As a result, they can be seen conducting several forms of ineffective sabotage, until they just default to attacking us normally. During this 3v3 match, we find our group at a disadvantage. It would seem that the only way to win is to get all the enemies to dance. However, the only person who can act is Chris. They try several times, but it just isn't enough. Susie steps in, furious over this seemingly arbitrary limitation. Susie isn't stupid. She doesn't need Chris to tell her how to act, so she begins to act on her own. Rousey is seemingly against this, as he argues that Chris should be the one with this unique ability. In an odd turn of events, even though Rousey doesn't want to act, Susie uses her will to make him learn anyway. Once again, we see an example of Susie enacting her will onto the game and fundamentally changing it as a result. The fight is over, and the boys are now more agreeable with us. They explain that the Queen of this world has recently undergone a change. She was always strict, but now she has taken to impose her will on every Darkner here, disallowing any form of music that she does not approve of. They also tell of a small man that asked them to sneak into Queen's mansion to steal something for him. But I'm sure that won't be relevant later. With the support of the resistance movement guaranteed, the Lightners continue their journey. 3 distinct roller coasters are affixed to a track, and while these carts are fast, they don't allow for much control. The Lightners' control of the situation continues to drop as the Queen arrives. She introduces our protagonist to her latest peon, Noelle. It seems as though the Queen's intimidation has worked, and now Noelle has agreed to assist the Queen. Although Noelle doesn't really know anything about fighting, and she definitely doesn't intend to hurt Susie. Following this, the Queen proceeds to enact Plan B. And of course, B stands for Berdly. Berdly has finally arrived. His absence is not explained, although his appearance is very apparent. He scoffs at the light nerds, claiming they to be the only thing that stands in the way of his Smartopia. The Queen seems equally put off, having not asked him to join in the first place. It would seem that she is taking what she can get. Berdly is firmly of the belief that he is in the right, and that the Queen has his best interests in mind. Defeating Berdly comes very easy, although Berdly was only a distraction, you see. The Queen not only allows him to fall from a great height, she reveals that this was her plan all along. She intended for the Lightners to use the roller coaster track knowing that it wasn't finished. Already we see that the Queen is not very compassionate towards some of her subordinates. After the Lightners plunge, they wake up in an area of the cyberworld that is noticeably less cared for. The sparkly, exciting appearance of the world above seems to have been built on a shaky foundation. The Lightners collect themselves and jump off of the trash heap that supposedly broke their fall. Susie takes a moment to make a joke, claiming she is now king of the trash pile. This moment of joy is fleeting as she slips and falls, crashing to the ground. She attempts to play it off, act like she isn't injured, but she stumbles once again. Rousey walks over and gives her a warm hug. Having only met him yesterday, Susie jolts up, still not fully comfortable with physical affection. Regardless, Susie is now healed thanks to Rouse. She asks him how he can do such a thing, showing genuine interest in the act of healing people. The offer to teach her is made, but Susie refuses. For now. Moving forward, we see that the path diverges. Rouse offers us a choice. We can either go with him or go with Susie. After we make our choice, Susie leaps forward to complain that Chris gets to make all the group decisions. She takes Rouse by the hand and drags him away, leaving Chris all alone in the trash heap. Although I don't think they will be alone for long. And that is where we will pause our story for now. When we last saw Chris, they produced a knife and turned to look at the screen, their eyes glowing a bright red. All of this setup is something the community had no choice but to just sit with for 3 years. The theory crafting scene was still relatively fresh off the heels of Undertale, and we had even less information than we do now. Fan animations of Chris going sicko mode, killing all of our Chapter 1 friends, Chris's Kara theory sprouting up left and right. This was common back then. Keep in mind, we were super unfamiliar with Chris. So, evil Chris theory actually had a leg to stand on back then. We had but a singular piece of a 7-part odyssey. Of course, everything we thought was wrong. If I may speak candidly for a minute, I do miss certain aspects of Imagination Dark World theory. This theory essentially implied that everything that happened within the Dark Worlds was a game of make-believe. It was a super immersive game of Dungeons and Dragons that Chris and Susie shared together. I particularly liked the aspect of the world being created by Chris. It was like an emotionally resonant journey Chris made for Susie to make her feel less lonely. Ultimately, I understand and agree with why imagination theory just can never be true. It was a pretty fun idea at the time though. Theories and speculation are all well and good, but now with the conclusion staring us in the face, I am left wondering, why? Why does Chris do this if all they were planning on doing was eating Toriel's pie? The meta reason why this happened is to spark intrigue, get people talking. The contextual reason is a bit more difficult to place. This cutscene has a specific purpose, to tell us that Chris is a separate entity from us. With knowing this, we are left to decipher their actions after they remove us, because afterwards we have literally no influence on them whatsoever. Chris can move independently from us, and the first thing they do is pull out a knife and turn towards the door. At the time, this was interpreted to mean that Chris was going to do something evil, like hurt Toriel, but they did no such thing. So why the menacing look? Why the aura farming? I could accept the idea that Chris is just LARPing in their room pretending to be a badass, or even they're just really excited to demolish that pie. Yet the more I think about it, I can't help but think they are looking directly at us to let us know that they can see us. I understand the exact mechanics of this would be wild. Like, how are they doing this? Is it like a super specific giant TV screen that only they can see? If so, do they know what we look like? This wouldn't necessarily be the only example of something only Chris can see, as the save points are also visible. Now I should mention that this line has been interpreted to solely be referring to the player, and while I think that has some validity, it doesn't explain how Chris decides to stretch out their hand. Keep in mind, we don't have control over Chris when the text box is up, so unless this was a rare situation where we told them to stretch out their hand, I would argue the reason why they do this is because they can see the save points too. With the added context of other events of characters looking at the screen for seemingly no reason, I would say this interpretation has weight. We have assessed the possible what, now it's time for the why. Why is Chris doing this? I can only assume it's the same reason they stuffed the soul inside the birdcage. They are not our friend. They are not asking us for permission. We control them on the regular, so this is just fair to Chris. They need us for a specific reason, and they are not willing to ask nicely considering the cage. Regardless of whether Chris knows us or not, this has happened before. When the soul is removed, they immediately toss us into the birdcage, signifying its intended purpose. A cage to keep us in one place and a red wagon for locomotion. These are not everyday items a teenager would have, and it seems like this is all they have. As far as we know, we have arrived to this world on this day. We don't know Chris, but judging by the lengths they've gone to keep us trapped here, one can't help but imagine that they know us. Or perhaps this has happened before. The wagon implies that Chris has taken us and perhaps shown us to someone else, maybe a close friend of the family that they trust. Chris either had a similar run-in with a separate soul from our own, or they anticipated our arrival because they were warned about it beforehand. Both outcomes are interesting, but for now, let's get more into the story. Chris had the chance to sleep the previous night, and it seems like they didn't. Chapter 2 then gives us the important detail that Chris has not been sleeping well recently. This trend appears to be common, so we can assume Chris was up to something the previous night, and I'm not just talking about eating pie. To theorize about what they were doing has been done to death. Also, it's all but confirmed what they were doing. The only true question is what they were doing specifically that night. They probably met with the mayor to discuss some things. They could have snuck into the library to open up Chapter 2's fountain, or they could have simply just ate the pie the entire night. The possibilities are vast. I think it would be more interesting to discuss the phenomena of time skips between chapters we have experienced. In a typical story, watching a character conduct all of their mundane activities would be boring, to put it bluntly. This is an interactive media, so it would be impractical to watch Chris sleep for 8 hours straight. We know they didn't do this, but just roll with me for a second. The gap in story between chapters has been a common occurrence, with this moment in particular being the first. Events take place during these time skips, actions of Chris that we are not aware of. This is an intuitive facet of storytelling. We are always to assume things are going to happen when the story jumps ahead, and it would be unrealistic to observe every little detail. The time skip is almost always done for the sake of pacing or player convenience. But not here. The gap in story is made to keep important knowledge from the player. The point of highlighting this is to discuss the circumstances of our involvement. We are brought here and connected to the world, so as a result we see everything that happens through Chris. So when that connection is disrupted by the end of a chapter, one must wonder what causes this. Are the chapters arbitrarily timed? Does Chris decide when the chapter ends? Is this just a byproduct of Deltarune's chapter structure? Am I overthinking things?
Yes.
Who said that? You understand why I'm questioning this, right? This is Deltarune. Sure, this could just be a quirk of video game structure, but the fact that this is Deltarune leads me to believe there may be a reason why the story jumps in the first place. I know I'm jumping ahead, but the end of Chapter 3 is one of the biggest perpetrators of this. The chapter ends and we jump ahead to the following morning. We know for a fact that things take place in between chapters. So what does this mean? The only other example we could use to cross-examine is that one moment at the beginning of Chapter 2 when Chris goes to sleep. They lose consciousness, so we lose consciousness as well. Yet this doesn't account for the moments in between chapters. Unless we are meant to believe that Chris simply passed out as soon as the door opened at the end of Chapter 3, something is going on here. But I don't know what. Unless Toby sees fit to answer this question, we will just have to accept that this is a video game thing, and time just jumps between chapters. Whether we like it or not, these are the terms of our relationship with our protagonist, and the game itself. The fallout of Chapter 1 is apparent, although the overall effects are still unclear. But enough about Chris. Let's talk about Susie. We can see she is still thinking about yesterday. Her cadence has changed, implying that she no longer hates Chris. She's even taken to calling Chris her friend around other people. If anything, Susie is more concerned with the validity of her memory. Despite how quick she calls Chris her friend, she is of the belief that this is contingent on what happened yesterday, which of course is taken into question. This pause from Susie speaks volumes. She looks away from Chris and begins to ask what will happen if they open the door and it's empty. If everything that happened yesterday wasn't real, how can she be sure their friendship is real? It's a valid question, although I think the important thing to highlight is that Susie is concerned with their friendship. She stalls over the idea that it was all for naught. Susie's arc isn't over, far from it, as she still struggles with her self-image. Before traveling into the library dark world, you have the option to decline a brand new adventure. Like she always does, Susie disregards your choice and you end up entering the dark world anyway. But before she does this, she speaks of a mistake that Chris has made. The mistake of knowing her. If I were to make a Susie Chapter 2 character analysis today, this is what I would call it, because it has so many connotations. This is post their friendship being formed in Chapter 1. Susie once had preconceived notions regarding how Chris saw her. Their silence was filled in with judgmental remarks that Susie implanted onto Chris. Now that she understands Chris so much better, she knows that Chris has decided to make themselves a permanent part of her life. Susie understands this. Yet, if you were to ask her why Chris has done this, I doubt she would have an answer for you. She sees this decision as a mistake, a fault of Chris, that they would willingly decide to spend time with Susie. As much as we like to speculate, even we don't know the extent of Chris's motive yet. There could be a multitude of reasons why Chris values Susie so much. But Susie's opinion of herself is clear. She understands and even acknowledges that Chris is now a meaningful part of her life, yet she has labeled this as a mistake which Chris has made. Despite Susie's tough exterior, we see that she values her connections with other people, as we'll see with her and Noelle in a few moments. Speaking of Noelle, we see she has now taken a more direct approach when interacting with Susie. She wants to become more involved in Susie's life. So, I think we can drop the act now. Noelle has a crush on the Violet Tormentor, and the reasoning for this will be explored thoroughly in this chapter. There isn't much to say on this for now, aside from the little detail of Noelle inviting Chris to the library as an afterthought. Noelle and Chris were once close friends. They have grown apart since then, and it seems as though Noelle is making more of an effort to connect with Susie rather than Chris. There isn't necessarily a point I'm trying to make right now, but there will be more time to talk about this at a later date. Berdly was already introduced as an egotistical character, and now with an environment that encourages fantasy, his persona has been magnified. Not only does he enlist himself in Queen's plan, he believes his alliance with the monarch is strong, when all Queen truly cares about is Noelle. Berdly is one of those characters that acts in such a way that it's hard to say if the writers want you to like him or not. Worry not, my seasoned YouTube viewer, we will discuss the mind-bending intellect of Berdly in his own dedicated video. Finally, we get to Rouse, seemingly the most efficient of our main cast. With the inclusion of not one but 3 rooms he has built overnight, to say he has kept busy is an understatement. The obvious interpretation of Rouse making a room that almost perfectly matches Chris's actual room is that he has seen it before. This has already been talked about to great lengths. So what I want to highlight right now is the fact that people rarely talk about Lancer's room. Lancer has a room too, and while you could argue this was just copied over from Chapter 1, it is interesting that this was included with the Lightner's rooms. With the benefits of current day knowledge, we know Lancer has some part to play in the prophecy. Although what I want to highlight is that his room is in the castle, the same place which Rouse renovated the night before, the part that was changed before any of the Card Kingdom Darkners made their arrival. Rouse not only knew that Lancer was a part of the prophecy, but he went out of his way to make a room for him before he even arrived. He didn't do this purely out of kindness, mind you. Most of the other Darkners don't get their own rooms. Rouse's uncanny knowledge has always been clear, but with this development, I can't help but wonder if he knew Susie and Lancer would form the friendship they did. The initial interpretation as to why Lancer received his special room treatment is that he is good friends with Susie. Yet, I still wonder, what if Susie and Lancer were destined to be friends? Hence Rousey making a room for him despite being sworn enemies yesterday. This suspicion extends to the king, considering the cell the king automatically goes into when the Darkners arrive. It's really uncanny, isn't it? Like, how did that even work? Does Rousey have some sort of mental control over the castle town so that when all Darkners arrive, he subconsciously made sure the king was immediately sent to the dungeon? If there was a portion of this scene which involved the king appearing and then immediately being taken away, I wouldn't question this. It's just a tad strange that the king automatically appears in the Castletown holding cell. That's all. To this day, the Church Dark World is my favorite, mostly because of the scale and the background music. If I wanted to be more objective, I cannot deny that the structure of the cyber world is superior. I understand the merit of keeping every chapter unique, yet I am shocked that these mechanics haven't been brought back for subsequent chapters. The cyber field has environmental obstacles in the form of these energy pads. Waves of energy drop from the ceiling and damage you if you stand in their way. However, you have a guide to help you with the timing. This song, like any other, follows a beat. The pads send out waves to the beat, making all these areas a sort of rhythm game. This setup may seem mundane when I describe it, but I assure you this system is fantastic in its execution. If you're an audiophile like me, you will appreciate this synchronicity. When designing their digital worlds, game developers have to consider several things: pacing, challenge, and interactivity, just to name a few. The pacing of a level keeps the player from getting bored, the challenge keeps them attentive, and the interactivity gives them that oh-so-lovely escapist dopamine response that most gamers strive for. This level accomplishes all three at once, and it truly should be studied. The player listens to the music to get a feel for the rhythm. Chances are they are enjoying the music anyway, so this is something they would do already. Moving Chris along with the music gives this feeling of harmony, both tactile and visual. Chris is moving to the music, while you, the player, move to the music too. It's almost like you're dancing with the game itself. It's really effective. Seriously, Toby needs to do this again at some point. It's so good. Everything about the Cyberfield area can be described with one word. F-U-N. The music is cheery and upbeat. The dance-like movement I just described. You even progress through the level with what is akin to an amusement park ride. This entire area is made to exemplify the platonic idea of a fun adventure that Susie was looking for. We see the beginning of a trend with the introduction of the Cyber Dark World. Admittedly, this may be a bit too early to talk about, but we'll get into it anyway. The Card Castle Dark World came preloaded with a narrative within. This narrative featured a court of 4 kings. The narrative was disturbed by the court jester known as Jevil. He told the Spade King of the Fountain's glory, and as a result, the king overthrew his fellow Darker monarchs. We show up, and the rest is history. Things in the Cyber Dark World go a little differently. Through various conversations with the NPCs, you discern a history of this world that has also been disrupted. The Queen is the ruler of this world, another monarch. Now, obviously, just because we have a king and a queen doesn't mean they know each other, is what I would say if we literally didn't get confirmation for that. So, the dialogue we get at the end of the chapter is like 50% joking by my estimations. Queen explains that she is Lancer's mother, but then clarifies she is his mother starting now as an adoption. However, when she leaves, she offers to get the king something from the store, almost like they're a couple. Honestly, this whole sequence is a little confusing. Are they a thing? Is the queen just an old flame who has now decided to adopt Lancer? For the sake of staying on task, let's just take everything from this scene as literal. The whole point of bringing this up is the underlying monarch structure we see in the leadership of the Dark Worlds. The overall trend I was referring to was the power structure found in these fictional lands. You have a single, strong Darkner who tells all the other Darkners what to do. Something recently has sent them into a frenzy, and now they have turned more tyrannical. What seems to have happened with King has also happened to Queen. We'll get to Queen's story in a minute, although I should briefly touch on the theme of recurring monarchs. From a meta standpoint, this makes a lot of sense. Deltarune, at certain moments, has parodied the typical role-playing game. Dragons, swords, magic, ancient medieval iconography like castles and villages. The aesthetic of this period is synonymous with old tales, which has evolved into the fantasy genre of fiction. Of course, this is all made to contrast the technologically advanced city our heroes find themselves in, but the theme still stands. What I really want to get down to is the reason why there is a king and queen to begin with. In Chapter 3, we meet a character that goes by the name Ram, and through Ram, we learn a little more about Chris's adventures of the past. More than they probably wanted us to. Ram has seen Chris before. They have a shared history together. He reminisces over a time where King and Queen were alongside Chris, and supposedly there was this girl with them too, presumed to be Noelle. The meta-thematic reason why there are so many monarchs is clear. However, I wanted to briefly tease the idea that it was Chris who made King and Queen. There is a chance the two Darkners were originally their creations. That is all I can say for now. I hope to see you much later in the future during the Chapter 3 analysis series. Okay, so after a quick side tangent, let's get into the politics of the cyber world. Like I said, the Darkner NPCs give you insight on the history of this place. Queen has always been in charge, as she was cited as being the most knowledgeable. Her internet connection allowed her to learn and understand things better than most, so she is the one who calls the shots. Unfortunately, the internet has recently experienced an outage. As a result, Queen doesn't have any new information coming in, yet she still has this mild superiority complex. So now, with limited information, her thought process is limited, her opinions are one-sided, stagnant. She still feels like what she is doing is correct, unable to understand that she is acting on limited information. Queen begins to enact her will in ways that appear random. Although if you pay attention, you'll realize the Queen is stopping people from expressing themselves in certain ways. First with the music, she outlaws a vital form of expression that contrasts with her own. This is what brings forth the rebellion of Sweet Cap and Cakes. These guys were introduced and then very quickly forgotten by the entire community for years. Look for a Sweet Cap and KK theory on YouTube. You cannot find it. Don't get me wrong, I know these Darkners are just here to goof around and have fun. They are just immediately overshadowed by more interesting characters like Queen or Spamton. The boys here were designed by a guest artist who goes by the name of Nelno. Sweet's design is a speaker, but I always found it strange how similar he looks to Prototype from One Shot. Yeah, look at this. Looks pretty similar, right? I guess there's only so many robot designs you can go with, there's bound to be intersection. The exact relationship between these three, as stated by their creator, is unknown. At one point they were described as brothers, and that was specifically backtracked, so it's left unclear. You can see them as good friends, or brothers, or anything. Each of the music trio has a different reason for fighting the Queen. Sweet is the leader. He starts attacking you as soon as you enter the cyber field, because Captain said that you helped Queen kidnap Noelle. His intentions seemed well. He wants to do good, it's just that he doesn't properly communicate. Susie explains the situation, but Sweet doesn't listen. A person with good intentions who makes the wrong decision, doesn't listen to people, and ends up hurting their cause in the process. I wonder if this will come up again in the future. Captain seems to be in this only to touch mademoiselles, whatever that means. Sweet tries to keep things on task by affirming their goal is to stop the Queen, but he doesn't listen. Continuing this, we have KK, who is a CD player. I always love this bit, by the way. They all just start dancing and playing music and the fun gang just starts walking away. Like, they are done with the conversation, so they just decide to leave. As ineffective as sweet cap and cakes are in the beginning, they do contribute a substantial amount in the final battle against Queen. They also stand out compared to the previous Dark World's residents. I established a rule at the beginning of this section. However, I forgot to mention, these guys are one of the rare circumstances which break that rule. The Queen is the official ruler of this Dark World, much like the King was of his Dark World. However, the balance of power is not set, as these guys are clear examples of Darkners who have their own agency. The Queen is literally using these plugs to morph and subjugate other Darkners to do what she says. This naturally implies that the majority of the Darkners here began to defy her as well. Looking back at the card Kingdom Dark World, it was actually made pretty clear that most of the Darkners listened to the King because the King paid them. While this hierarchy exists, it is at the same time not the law of the land. Darkners do have agency. They can say no. Determination or not, they don't have to go along with whatever their ruler says. There are reasons as to why a Darkner falls in line, but realistically, these reasons could be easily interpreted as basic societal needs. The Rudens of Chapter 1 wanted basic societal needs such as gems. The Music Boys wanted freedom of expression through music. It's almost like this is some kind of deeper message about authority or something. Now call me crazy, but I feel like the reason why these Darkners are referred to as traitors or rebels is because the special Darkner that was put in charge demanded absolute appeasement at all times. It's funny, because I bet things would have ended pretty differently for these leaders had they treated the people under them with a little bit more respect. The Darkners of these worlds put their fate in these monarchs, and that faith was squandered, eventually leading to their downfall. Oh man, I am sure glad nothing like this happens in real life. Deltarune has incorporated the use of several themes. Each chapter appears to have an integral theme it adheres to. For a nice narrative throughline, I wanted to pick a specific theme which I will come back to periodically throughout the analysis series. This theme typically relates to the main conflict of the chapter. For example, Chapter 1 featured the theme of trust. Slowly over time, Susie learns to trust the people around her, and this trust has allowed this team to form. Chapter 2 houses what I would call a theme of good intentions. Everyone here has mostly good intentions. It really just boils down to the fact that they hurt people in the process of accomplishing their goals. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. The phrase itself was based on a song by a band named Fear and Faith. It is in reference to how evil acts can be caused by people who did not intend to be evil. This colloquialism is all over Chapter 2, so for each part of the main analysis, I will revisit this topic in regards to every character that represents it. For Cyberfield, we have Sweet Cap and Cakes. They begin this journey as our enemy, and could have very well done more harm than good. The Queen is enforcing her will on the people of this world, yet the greatest transgression in their eyes is her laws against music. Just going by these characters' designs, I would say it's a good assumption that they love music. Freedom of expression is being denied, and the boys see this as an insult against their very nature. Every Darkner has their purpose, and their purpose is to make music, so they rebel. Expression is a fundamental right, and they seek to usurp the monarch who has refused to adhere to this. On paper, what the boys are doing is right, yet they end up being an obstacle for our Lightners. This would be a very good time to understand how something like this could happen in the first place. If you intend to do good things, to help people, surely it would be next to impossible to end up harming them, right? On the surface, this term feels like it was created to discourage people from helping each other. While I doubt this is the case, it is a very wise proverb to adhere to. This reminds me of an old memory from when I was younger, like super young. Essentially, one day while playing on the playground, one of my friends slipped and skinned their knee. I wanted to help, so without even thinking, I tried to put a bandage on their knee by myself. Thankfully, a teacher stopped me before I did. I was being a dumb little kid, so I didn't realize that my hands were also covered in dirt. My hands were not clean, so I could have absolutely made it so the scrape became infected. If that teacher didn't stop me, I would have done more harm than good. There is a distinct difference from wanting to help people and having the ability to help people. People can have incorrect information, lack of proper experience on the subject, or even they think they know better than the person they are trying to help. Moving back to our music trio, it is revealed that the reason why they attacked the Lightners in the first place is because they believe they helped Queen capture Noelle. They are operating on incorrect information. Captain is the one who claims this, and I think it's clear he didn't get the full context. Cap more than likely saw this altercation from a distance. He does not know anyone involved in the situation, and on top of that, he didn't think to confirm the situation with anyone by simply talking to them. I can't help but think this is allegorical to how people can act on the internet, making assumptions, judging an entire situation based on a singular piece of information. It's happened before, it even happened in this very community. While I don't think the writing is referencing a specific event, I would say this is good general knowledge to have. Those who want to help shouldn't always, because they might not be able to. So when is the correct time to act? I'm not here to tell you how to live, and I don't think the game is either. I do think the game is offering a perfect example of someone acting when they shouldn't. Cap had limited information on what happened. He does not recognize his limited information, and he did not seek to get clarity on said information. This of course further compounds as Sweet is equally negligent. Sweet is receiving second-hand information and treats it as fact, which of course leads to him attacking the Lightners in the first place. KK is the least to blame out of the three, although his reason isn't that much better. He just seems to be there along for the ride. He's not really taking any stance on the matter as presented. The obliviousness of Sweet, Cap, and Cakes is played for laughs. Even when the battle is over, the guys don't fully understand the context of the situation. Regardless, the theme of good intentions is clear. They want to stop the Queen's tyranny, and as a result of their actions, they hindered people who would have just as easy been their allies. This theme persists throughout the chapter, but we'll pick up this conversation later. I never had a chance to talk about the enemies of Chapter 1. Now that we have a lot more time dedicated to each section of the chapter, we can now focus on minor details, like enemy design. Let's go over all the enemies we see in Cyberfield. The Werewire Darkners are exceptionally unique, as they are technically two Darkners in one. The tiny, passive pink forms are technically known as the Plug Boys. These Darkners act in a role similar to the puzzle pieces of Chapter 1. They are Darkners that live here, they just don't attack you unprovoked. The design of these guys comes from the term pareidolia, seeing faces in inanimate objects. Your brain has been trained to notice patterns. When you're walking through a lovely forest or a basement, your brain has evolved to identify if something is watching you. The brain doesn't really care if you're looking at a plug or not. It doesn't take chances, and also we didn't evolve to differentiate plugs from predators, so you see a face. When the wires come down and attach themselves to a plug boy, they transform. Truly living up to their names, the Werewires are transformed versions of the Darkners they were before. The name of course is based off the term werewolf, a creature of myth which involves a human turning into a canine-like creature. Also, we have a funny Tubby Fox double meaning if you take into account the homophone wear, as in wear clothes. They are wearing wires, so now they are werewires. What? They're wearing a wire? It's the feds, somebody talk, cheese it! So anyway, the game sort of treats this event as the Plug Boys becoming an entirely new Darkner, hence the new name. I always found this interesting because, well, like a lot of things in this game, it's never explained. So the wires are pretty much confirmed to be sourced by the Queen. She is causing the wires to come down. The wires are specific to her, because we see later in the chapter she's using one to control Berdly, who is a Lightner. The werewires attack you as soon as they transform, so it can be inferred that the werewires are getting direct orders from Queen, as they had no inclination to attack before. So, how does the Queen do this? Is the wire an extension of herself, or is it just another Darkner entirely? Queen was revealed to be a laptop, so any wire or exterior connection is something else that would not be included. A wire is a type of physical transfer medium, so they wouldn't necessarily be a part of her. Honestly, if we're going by Dark World rules, the wire itself would be considered another Darkner entirely. This could simply be a parasite situation. We do see Darkners like Virovirokun later, literal representations of a computer virus, so it's not entirely wrong to assume that Darkners can be parasites as well. Then again, these things can be spared and recruited. Even stranger, when you recruit them, it seems like the plug comes off and the plug boys are free. But if that was the case, then why do the werewires appear in the recruit entry? Are we recruiting the werewires or the plug boys? I'll admit, I'm probably putting more thought into this than the developers did. Maybe calling it a parasite is a bit too hasty. This could easily be a Shelter and Slowpoke situation. I mean, if that's the case, I wonder what would happen if you take a plug and then you tried to— Never mind, let's talk about the tasks. Task is a Darkner who has a likeness akin to a lion, which is mostly made to complement the lion tamer looking Darkner, Task Manager. But we'll get to her later though. The name Task is another homophone. In computing terms, task is used to describe a unit of execution or a unit of work. For example, the video you're currently watching is most likely using a web browser, which is a type of task. So considering the plain appearance of task as well as the added detail that the internet in Hometown is down, I would say the task is a simple background task. Task is another example of a bond between multiple Darkners. We don't see it yet, but Task is one of many Darkners that are meant to cooperate with the Task Manager. While this seems like a pretty cut and dry relationship, I find it more interesting that this is yet another example of multiple Darkners being connected in a meaningful way. The tasks are clearly disorganized, ineffective, and, well, stupid. The game's words, not mine. They need the Task Manager to guide them. This relationship doesn't appear to be as parasitic as that of the werewire, yet the connection is clear. I'm not sure if there was a meaningful effort put into making all the Darkners connected in some way, but it definitely feels like it. This would perfectly represent how technology is interconnected. Not a single gadget, but a combination of moving pieces working together, sort of like a digital ecosystem. A singular task is not that much on its own, so it fights in groups. And even if it does fight in groups, it needs the Task Manager to guide it. This is more of a symbiotic relationship, and it helps make Chapter 2's Dark World feel more like a system rather than just a group of enemies in a computer-themed location. Of course, if you have a cohesive system, there will be those made to disrupt that system, which leads us to Virovirokun. This Darkner is a computer virus. This is supported by the fact that their pink bullets have the ability to infect white bullets of other Darkners and themselves. As far as I'm aware, there is no official confirmation for this, but I am almost certain that the naming of Viro was based on a well-known character from Yume Nikki called QQ-kun. So, QQ has a long and complex history within the Yume Nikki fandom. There is a lot of debate around what he is supposed to represent, although the naming of him is based on the sound he makes when he is creepily rubbing the railing of the staircase next to him. The phrase QQ is an automatopoeia, the process of creating a word phonetically imitating a sound. Kun is a Japanese honorific, similar to sir or madam in English. Kun is used to describe a boy who is more on the young side, or even a boy that you know very well, like a co-worker or a friend. I'm not sure if this would be really fitting for Viro, considering the primary pronoun used for them is it. As a computer virus, it seems as though Viro has a destructive role as opposed to everyone else, although they aren't treated this way by their fellow Darkners. This fight is the first time we see a dedicated costume change for the Fun Gang. To offer Viro some tender love and care, they all change into these cute little nurse outfits, each a representation of their personalities. Chris offers a hot cup of what I believe to be hot chocolate, or maybe it's a pot of tea. Susie whips out the comically large needle, which could just be indicative of her prickly personality, and Rouse produces a cake, which he loves to make for people. This technically doesn't involve Virovirokun, but I think now would be as good a time as ever to bring up this phenomena that we see inside the Dark Worlds. So obviously, this is ignoring the simple understanding that this costume change was done for comedic effect. but it would seem at certain moments the protagonists can produce things out of thin air just by acting. Whether this is a result of the Dark World or just an effect of the battle system in general is anyone's guess. No matter what, it's happening. We can see it with our own eyes. And these events lead me to believe that the Dark Worlds work literally like a dream world. We'll get more into this later, but for now, it seems like the Dark Worlds are subject to the process of manifestation. Manifestation is a term used to describe the creation of things by thinking about them. You can do this inside a dream because all of this is happening inside your mind palace. Your imagination is your limit. And if this is what is happening, these moments could open the door for some creative and exciting engagements when the Lightners realize they can do this. Expectations can be a fickle thing. I have never suffered the stress of finally releasing a part 2 to a game 3 years later, but I could only imagine the stress the Deltarune team was feeling. 3 years of waiting, and speaking from experience, the wait was more than worth it. Everything from Chapter 1 was raised to a new level. A unified fun gang means that we play through Chapter 2 as a full party now. The inclusion of S action and R action makes the party feel more useful. The Mercy Bar has now been introduced. The Queen is on a whole new level compared to the King. She is so much more present by comparison, and the story only benefited from it. The level design now works in tandem with the music. Seriously, it would be awesome if they brought this back in the future. The Dark World itself is considerably bigger. The Field of Hopes and Dreams was nice, but it's really hard not to imagine it inside a black void at all times. Cyberworld feels like a small portion of an entire city. The scale has transcended from Chapter 1, and you can feel it. With the introduction of Noelle, Deltarune has changed forever. As we'll discuss further soon, our new party member opens up new avenues that were once thought to be impossible. Noelle had very little screen time in Chapter 1, but it will soon become clear that this chapter is dedicated to her. It's dedicated to her life, her problems, her hopes and dreams. I would even go as far to say that this Dark World was made for her. Despite only being a third of the way through, I would say with certainty that Deltarune Chapter 2 was the perfect escalation to a game we fell in love with all those years ago. Thank you all so much for watching. Goodbye. To be continued in Part 2. The Forgettable Little Bluebird. I would like to thank all of the Nighthawk channel members. Thank you Lilico. Thank you Bleed4MBG. Thank you Vantum. Thank you Kiriyami. Thank you Avast Antivirus. Thank you Savvy Sillybug. Thank you Gaston Zumbo. Thank you Weagle. Thank you LJ Afton. Thank you Fluby. Thank you Poopy. Thank you Heboi. Thank you Mine. Thank you Wondersaw. Thank you Big Boy. Thank you Aeon Sharky. Thank you Iceburger. Thank you J-Dog the Jester. Thank you Her Highnessness. Thank you The Night Homie. Thank you Subathiru. Thank you Zelt. Thank you Lucas. Thank you Lumen Scented. Thank you Holocohesi. Thank you Starlight. Thank you The True Duality. Thank you Cappy Cappy. Thank you all so much.